Hello, everyone. My name is Albert Jahami. I'm here with the City of San Jose and the GovAI Coalition, and today I'm here to talk with our vendor partners about why governments want you to fill out the AI fact sheet. We're going to cover a lot in this video, so I've got topics here. There are timestamps in the video description alongside chapters in the actual video itself. We'll go through why people are talking about and asking about the AI fact sheet, help you get started on the AI fact sheet, some common questions and concerns that we're hearing from our vendor partners, and then finally we'll go into a deep dive of the AI fact sheet. Feel free to skip around, bounce around, whatever's useful for you. So let's get started. Context. The public sector is lagging in AI adoption behind the private sector. We find that around 30% fewer employees understand generative AI in the public sector versus private industry, and we're seeing this across the board. And we're seeing this is impacting our vendor partners as well. When they're trying to share an AI solution, such as traffic flow management, they might be thinking it's ChatGPT. They don't seem to get it. And others are reporting that it feels like governments are afraid of the AI solutions. And to a certain extent, this is understandable. We hear stories about governments investing in AI solutions and it doing nothing for them. And we are also hearing that it wasn't until they asked key questions they actually learned essential information about whether or not they can actually use the AI system in their system. Governments are slow to adopt AI because they don't understand it. But that means that when governments do understand what they're buying, they're more likely to buy it. And that brings in the GovAI Coalition and our AI fact sheet. Over the first year, the GovAI Coalition has grown from just a handful of agencies to over 600, with over 1,700 members across the US and abroad looking at how to use AI responsibly and effectively. This is the place where folks are coming to when it comes to AI adoption and enablement. And one of the key elements of that is the AI fact sheet. You can think of this as a nutrition facts for AI systems. It allows vendors and other AI developers to provide agencies documents on their AI system, how it works, what it does, and how we can understand the system better. It's being used by over 50% of coalition agencies right now, and it's one standardized ask across all of these agencies. So that means you fill this out once, you complete it, it can be shared with hundreds of agencies that you are looking to partner with and work with your solution. So let's walk through an AI fact sheet. And you can start this by going to our website here, and I'll pull that up. Right here is the GovAI Coalition webpage. You go and click on templates and resources, and from there, you scroll down, you will see vendor-related resources. Chief among them is the AI fact sheet. You can see a couple of things here. You can see it both in PDF and Word document form, so you can easily edit. And there are also examples for those explicitly developing an AI solution and an example for those that aren't developing an AI solution, but they are using some third-party AI system in their broader solution. Some examples for those that you can fill out. Before we dive deeply into the AI fact sheet, what you'll need to be able to complete it is one, just an understanding of your product, what it does, how it's supposed to serve governments. Are you building AI or are you leveraging AI? That goes back to what I showed you. Are you using a third-party AI system, which can fill out the AI fact sheet a bit differently than if you were actually developing the AI system? How do you test its effectiveness? How do you test whether the AI system is actually doing what we expect it and want it to do? And what types of safeguards do you have in place around bias in the AI system, around security of the data, things like that? We'll start by going through three of the common questions and concerns that we've heard from our vendors. The first one is something we just talked about. When you're a developer and you aren't really building an AI system, but you're using a third-party AI system, you still should fill out the AI fact sheet. And we have an example, again, for developers using third-party AI systems. The key thing is I need to know how you're applying an existing AI system. For example, if you're using some large language model to help provide a chatbot, that's great. They might have all the training data and test data for their own system. You don't need to report any of that information. What I care about from you is how you are testing and making sure that the AI system that you're using is actually applicable to your use case. So, how are you testing, for example, this large language model chatbot on government specific applications? Do you have a list of prompts you use? Do you have a list of things that you'll test out? We'll walk through a little bit more of that in detail in when we go through the deep dive, but for now, that's a basic understanding of it. The second item, we get this question all the time, is the fact sheet asks for my training and test data. What does that actually mean? To be very clear, you do not need to share your company's proprietary data. We aren't looking for you to give us some massive data set. We just need to understand info about your data in three specific categories. One, the domain. I need to understand that the training data that you are using, the test data that's used to test the effectiveness of the system, actually matches my use case. So, for example, if I'm looking at a system that is detecting potholes in the street, I need to make sure that your training data includes potholes, especially on public roads. Second, the scope. Does the scope of your data set cover the outliers and the situations that I'm going to expect in the field? Going back to that pothole example, do you have training data that includes potholes in the snow? Do you have training data that includes potholes in the rain, when it's dark out, when it's light out? I need to be able to understand that your system has been trained on the various situations that I am going to expect in my day-to-day operations. What really helps here is also understanding a general number. Are we thinking about you've trained this on 10,000 potholes, or have you trained this on 100,000 potholes? And then the source of the data. Was the data legally obtained? This is something that we are getting asked by our residents, and it's something that we need to be able to confirm with our vendor partners that the AI systems that we're deploying are using legally obtained data. And that's something that it is your responsibility to confirm for us that your system matches that. Now, going back to the example of what if I have a third party AI system that I'm using rather than my own? Then your training and test data might look a little different. But what's important is that when you talk about your test data, we want to understand how you are testing the system beyond just the standard large language model. So again, the large language model or the baseline AI system might already be trained on stuff. You might not know what the training data is. That's okay. Just say what model you're using, and that's enough information there. But for testing the data, we want to make sure that you're testing the system, whether it's a third party or your own system that you built, for its effectiveness. So, how are you testing that system? For example, going back to the pothole, there might be some computer vision model that you're using as a baseline, but this is then do you test it on 100 pictures of potholes that you found in the field? Now, the next question we get is around performance metrics. So, for performance metrics, I want to be very clear. We have three key things that we care about. We care about how you measure performance, how you assure performance in the field, and how can the government check on that performance, if at all. So I don't need to know if your system is 90% accurate today. It might change, right? Tomorrow it might be 91% accurate. Maybe it might be 88% accurate. That's okay. I don't need to know that number, and you don't need to put it in the fact sheet. What I do need to know is how you are thinking about performance. How do you measure it? Are you feeding in a bunch of images and checking if it correctly identifies them? Are you feeding in a bunch of prompts and giving a thumbs up or thumbs down around whether the response to that prompt was good? I want to understand that framework so that I can better talk with you about what's going on in the system and how I, as a government agency, should be thinking about the performance when I'm actually using it. Two, how do I assure the performance in the field? It's one thing for you to be able to say that it's accurate in your test settings, but how do I make sure that it's actually still doing its job when I've deployed it? And this is a question for you as the vendor. Are you performing any checks on the system after it's been deployed? Is there any auditing? Can you inspect it? Is there a way for you to track the performance on the back end? And in a similar vein to that, how can the government agency also check on the performance? So I want to be able to, for example, with a AI chatbot, check if my residents are liking the responses or not. This can be as simple as a thumbs up, thumbs down check for something like that, or something as simple as being able to understand how I'm checking the accuracy of my system. Being able to be check on that is important for me to make sure that the system is actually doing what I need it to do when I need it. So those cover the key biggest questions that we get across the board when it comes to our AI systems. The last thing that I'll mention, and this is something that we get all the time, is when they get started on the fact sheet, especially for our bigger vendors, they might have 100 different AI systems or 100 different applications of AI. Are they supposed to fill out 100 fact sheets? No. While it is a little bit more of an art than a science right now, it's important that you fill out your fact sheets for different buckets of applications. For example, if you are a big AI provider and you have a series of computer vision systems, you have a bunch of large language models, you have a bunch of translation models, I just need to know, give me a baseline for your large language models. Give me one baseline for your computer vision object detection systems. Give me one baseline for your translation system. That way, if I need to ask specific questions for you about one of your 100 products that use your large language model, I have at least a baseline understanding of where to start that conversation. I would highly recommend that for specific high profile applications. So I think about things like job application reviews, proposal reviewing, systems that have been in the spotlight over the last several years, that those ones, if you provide them, provide a specific fact sheet for them. If you have a job filtering system, provide a fact sheet for that. If you have a system around police enforcement or pretrial adjustments, these high risk, high profile systems, I highly recommend that you provide a specific fact sheet for those alongside a general fact sheet for different types of models. With all that being said, let's do a deep dive into the fact sheet for AI systems. So start off by just giving the name of your company, a name of the system or systems that you're describing here, and provide a brief overview of it. So for example, if you're thinking about large language models, give me a summary of what that large language model is and what it's supposed to do. And that can be fairly broad. Just give me something to better understand what's going on in the system. Help me understand the purpose of it and its intended domain. Is it meant to be used in the domains that I am thinking about? Training data and test data, as we explained previously, and for those skipping through chapters, I will share it again. We do not need to know your company's proprietary data. All I care about is understanding if the data matches my use case, so the domain of it is similar to what I'm looking at, that the scope of it covers my outliers, and that the source of the data is legally obtained. For example, if I'm dealing with a pothole system, pothole detection system, I need to know that your training and test data includes potholes on public roads. I need to know that its scope covers all of my outliers. Do you have pictures of potholes in the snow, in the rain, in the dark, in the morning? And was your data legally obtained? This is a question we're getting from our residents, and it's something that we need to be able to assure them, and we can assure them by you assuring us that your data is legally obtained. Then we get into model information. This is important for us to understand what's the flow here. For example, I've seen some fact sheets where people say, well, it's a large language model, step one, followed by a rule-based logic system, step two. Or maybe there is a optical character reader, step one, followed by a large language model, followed by a rule-based logic system. It's just important for you to walk us through what types of models that this puts together to be able to provide its services. Update procedure. This is a question around how often or frequently your system is updated. If you can give us a general idea of the cadence, for example, if the systems are updated typically once every month, every year, maybe every couple of years, that's what we want to understand. And two, how are we as the agency updated or notified that there is an update coming? And do we have any control around whether we can be a part of that update or we can stay on the previous version of the system? For third-party vendors or vendors that are using a third-party AI system, if you could just point to that system and say, we've seen it being updated every X couple of months or years generally, that's what we want to see there. But we also want to see from you as the provider of our solution, how are you going to notify us that the third-party AI system was updated or that something in your system has changed substantially to the point where it's going to impact how I'm providing my services? Inputs and outputs. So what goes into your AI system and what goes out of it. So for example, if I am doing this pothole detection system, what goes in is pictures of potholes. What goes out are detections that, yes, this is a pothole that needs fixing. Performance metrics. We talked about this earlier, but I'll go through it again for those seeking through the chapters. The performance metrics are things where we want to understand how you are thinking about performance. What's the framework that you use to make sure that your system is performing well? So, one, what are the performance metrics that you're using? Is it a quantitative measure? Is it some type of academically certified scoring system, whether it be like a blue score for translations a while back or user feedback testing? What are the procedures and processes that you use, and what are the numbers that you're looking at to try and optimize to make sure that your system is performing well? Two, how do you assure that that performance is actually working when I have the system? Do you do any audits on my particular application of the system? Is there a way for you to check that the system is performing well? Or are there ways for me as the government to be able to check on that performance, if at all? So are there any portals or any tools that I can use to see that the system is actually it's accurate or it's as accurate as we are expecting? Can I flag incorrect responses in a way that allows me to then go back and see, oh, the system is 85% accurate? In a similar vein, we want to think about bias. So how does your tool exhibit any types of bias? There's two ways to think about this, and I encourage you to detail both here. One, is this going to have any people-oriented biases? If your system is dealing with evaluating applications or any type of biometrics or human characteristics, is it does it have any potential for racial, gender, socioeconomic, or other types of biases that you might expect? Is there potential for age biases? These are the types of things where we want to understand how you are thinking about this. I cannot stress this enough. What scares me is not that a vendor is on top of their game and are able to point out that a bias might be present or there could potentially be bias. What scares me is when a vendor says, I don't see any bias at all, and that they haven't really thought through the potential risks that they might be presented with. The other option, and this is for mostly systems that aren't people oriented, what types of data biases might there be? For example, one of our examples is a permitting software. And an example potential bias there is if the training data only has residential homes, it might not be very good at handling permits for buildings, for office buildings, for example. Robustness. This is around how does the system handle outliers and can we overwrite decisions from the AI system that can then feedback and calibrate it in the future. Then we have optimal and poor conditions. So in what circumstances does the system perform well and what circumstances does it perform poorly? An example is maybe a speech to text AI system. Maybe it performs well when there is no other noise going around, but if it's a noisy environment, it might perform poorly. Explanation. How does the AI system explain what it does or how it does something? So a really nice example of this is if I have a computer vision software and it is telling me that it detects a pothole in the street, being able to see where in the image it detects a pothole, drawing a box around it, or with a large language model, being able to explain to me where it's getting its sources for its information that it's providing to me in its response, potentially links to what it's citing. That's the type of explainability that we're looking for here. Jurisdiction considerations. So is there anything that you've seen or considered when it comes to this specific jurisdiction? Is this built for the entire US? Is it built for a global market? Can we customize it for our specific state or city or school district? Help us understand that. And then we have data protection. So how are you protecting the data? What frameworks or systems do you comply with, whether it be NIST or certifications like SOC 2? Are you handling HIPAA data or health data? And do you have a certification for handling that data? Things like that. Lastly, we have our impact assessment questionnaire. So this delves a bit deeper into some of the questions that we asked previously, but in a more ethical perspective way. So how are AI tools monitored to identify any problems in usage? Similar to the robustness question that we had above, we want to be able to understand how can people flag issues in outputs? Is there a way for, with a chatbot that's facing my residents, for the residents to say, I did not like this response or this response was inaccurate? And then can I see that information to be able to then improve the system moving forward? How is bias managed effectively? Are there ways that you're monitoring your bias or ways that you help us, the agency, monitor the bias in our system as it goes forward? If I'm thinking about a traffic prediction software, does it seem to perform much better in predicting traffic in a high income area versus a low income area? Have you had any independent or internal studies on your bias, your accuracy, or other systems? Any type of information here that you can provide is good, even if it's just we've done a report internally and we can provide it upon request, or we have not done any of these tests at this time, but we can provide that information on request. Again, going back to robustness, is there a way for me as the agency and my partners to flag any issues that I see in the system? Have you had any considerations around human-computer interaction? So are there accessibility? Can this be managed and used for someone who uses a screen reader on their computer? Is this something where I have a easier access to an audio transcription? Are there different ways for me to access or use the tools, even if I don't have full ability that one would expect? Are there ways that I can still use this tool, even if I have difficulty or certain disabilities in using a computer? How is the computer interaction aspect of your tool been considered? For example, do you have accommodations for certain disabilities? Do you have access to screen readers? Is there a speech to text function? Are there other ways that I can use the tool rather than just the basic screen reader tools? Are there other ways that I can use the tool? And then if you have a AI strategy, AI policy, really anything about your approach to using AI responsibly and effectively, you're going to provide a link to it here. That concludes our walkthrough of the AI fact sheet. When you are ready to submit your AI fact sheet, or if you have any questions around how to fill it out or complete it, you can reach our team at the emails provided in the fact sheet template, digitalprivacy@sanjoseca.gov, angela1.zhao@sanjoseca.gov, and benatanE@trimet.org. Thank you for taking the time and looking forward to seeing your fact sheets soon.